Good afternoon, everyone. This is Louise Savela with Rails. I am a consulting and continuing education specialist here, and we are really thrilled to have this webinar today, The Accidental Cataloger with Emily Nimsicott. I will turn the reins over to her in just a moment. I just want to make a couple technical announcements. Everyone in the audience is muted, so you don't need your microphone today. If you have a question for Emily, use your questions box on the control panel. I'll be monitoring those and sharing them with Emily throughout the presentation, and we'll get to as many of those as possible. If you don't see your control panel, look in the upper right corner of your screen for an orange arrow button. That orange button will expand or collapse the control panel for you if you need to get it out of your way. If your audio is not working or you're having some trouble with the video, try logging out and logging back in. Sometimes that helps correct the problem. And if you chose to call in on the phone, make sure to enter your access code and PIN for today's webinar. That will help. Today's webinar is being recorded. Thank you so much to Emily for doing that. We know that there's a lot of demand for cataloging webinars and other workshops with our Rails members, and by recording this, we will post it on the Rails website on our CE archives page so that you can refer back to it or you can share it with your colleagues to review later. I am really happy. Like I said, we know cataloging is a demand. Emily is going to come back and do a few more webinars in the upcoming months. If you get the Rails e-newsletter, we just announced her next webinar will be on Wednesday, September 16th at 2 o'clock, and it will be an introduction to MARC Edit. And I also want to just make a quick plug for our member update, which will be on Thursday, September 17th. I've got an image on the screen. We do these member updates quarterly, and you can watch in person at a various site around the Rails area or watch from your computer through streaming video. And my manager, Joe Philippek, and I will be doing a talk about what our plans are for continuing education and consulting. And we would really like to hear from you also. Let us know how we're doing, or if there's something you'd like to see that we can offer for you. We hope you can join us that day and participate. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the reins over to Emily. I'm going to change the screen to her. And hi, Emily.
Hello. Let me just get my screen showing here. All right, let me get this started. Well, thank you so much for having me, Louise, and for all of you out there, thank you for attending. I'm really excited to be doing this presentation. As Louise said, I have found in general that there is a pretty high demand for basic cataloging introduction. I've given this presentation a couple times in my home state of Nebraska, and it's been really well received. I think that there are a lot of people out there working in libraries who either don't have formal library training, or they did but it wasn't cataloging, and now they're working as a cataloger because that's the job they happen to find, or they're in a small organization where they wear a lot of hats and they do a little bit of everything. And cataloging can be kind of tricky when you don't really have a lot of knowledge about it. And so, but luckily there are a lot of really cool tools out there and a lot of free tools that can help you do this work. And so I really like talking to people about this and explaining some of these really neat tools that are available out there to help you do cataloging. But before we get started with the actual tools themselves, I wanted to kind of just do an introduction to some of the so-called alphabet soup, the acronyms and things that get tossed around when you're talking about cataloging. Sometimes it sounds like catalogers kind of speak a different language, and so I want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page in case I refer to something later that you may not have known what it means coming into this. In the world of cataloging, one of the main groups of acronyms you'll hear are references to the rules that are used in order to create catalog records. And we are in a time of transition as far as this goes in the cataloging world. we recently transitioned from the old set of rules called AACR2, which stands for Anglo-American Cataloging Rules Second Edition. And in 2013, we transitioned to Resource Description and Access, or RDA. And when I say we transitioned, I mean the Library of Congress did, and the other national libraries. And so most people have been following their lead, either officially adopting RDA in their libraries for original cataloging, if they do any creation of original records. However, most libraries out there these days are copy cataloging. They're getting records from somewhere else. And if the Library of Congress is cataloging using RDA, then you are too if you're using their records for copy cataloging. So I would say just about every library out there now, if you're getting automated catalog records, you probably have RDA records in your catalog. But just wanted to be clear that when I'm talking about AACR2 or RDA, I'm talking about the rules for creating catalog records that tell you, which words in the title to capitalize and what form to put the author's name in and things like that. It tells you how to create the information that goes into your catalog record. Now, the other set of acronyms you will probably hear refer to sort of the computer encoding wrapper that goes around the information created according to the rules. So you'll probably hear MARC a lot. Talking about MARC records stands for Machine Readable Cataloging, and this is the encoding standard currently used in library catalogs so that we can do things like download records from the Library of Congress or and import them into our local catalogs. And then MARC encoding tells your front-end OPAC how to display the information so that it knows which piece of information is a title and which is the author's name, et cetera, et cetera. We are also in a time of transition as far as this goes as well. MARC, like I said, is the current standard, but the Library of Congress is working on an initiative called BibFrame. If you spend any time around catalogers, you may hear about BibFrame. It is, I guess, not technically an acronym, but it's an abbreviation for the Bibliographic Framework Transition Initiative, which is a really, really long and fancy way of saying that MARC doesn't necessarily work for us anymore. It's kind of an outdated standard. It's used only by libraries. It doesn't work very well with the rest of information out there on the web. So unlike RDA, which has already been implemented, BibFrame is still a work in progress, and so you will not really see a BibFrame catalog out there. So this is on the horizon, but I wanted to let you know that it's coming. And so, these are kind of the two main things we talk about in cataloging. We talk about the rules that tell us how to input the information, and then we have the encoding standard, either MARC or whatever comes after it, that kind of wraps around the information in order to let your catalog display it. So with that said, one of the main things you may need to know as an accidental cataloger, somebody who perhaps is in a smaller organization who doesn't have a budget for obtaining MARC records. A lot of libraries subscribe or they are a member of OCLC, the Online Computer Library Center, and they can download records from their WorldCat catalog. But it does cost. It is for a fee, and so a lot of smaller organizations with accidental catalogers cannot afford this. So I thought I'd mention some sources of free MARC records. One of them is the Library of Congress catalog. They do make all of their records available online at catalog.loc.gov. And here is their home screen, their interface. They've relatively recently kind of done an upgrade of their interface. I think it's more user-friendly than it used to be. So I will just do a test search here. Let's say Pride and Prejudice. And there we go. So we'll just choose the first one as an example. We'll say that's the one we're looking for. And you can view it either in a kind of a front-end display type of thing or with the MARC tags showing. And then you can either hit the Save Record link if you're just interested in one. This will pop up a file that you can save to your desktop or wherever a documents folder, and then import it into your catalog. Let's see. And I think that they still don't have a batch saving mechanism, which is kind of disappointing, I think. Let me see what happens here. And so you can save it, and then you'll get a file to download, and then you can upload it into your catalog. So it's a nice source of free records. It does have some limitations in that it is a reflection of what the Library of Congress itself catalogs. It's not going to necessarily have everything out there that's in WorldCat. One noticeable limitation is that the Library of Congress doesn't catalog audiovisual items, for example. You won't find a popular DVD in the Library of Congress catalog, but you know, for your print books and everything, it's a pretty good source. Another source of free records like this is Amicus, which is the National Library and Archives Canada's catalog. So it's another, again, a national library like Library of Congress is. You do have to create an account in order to access this. It's free, so if it doesn't cost you anything. I have gone ahead and set one up beforehand, and this one does have more audiovisual stuff. As I found, they must have a different collection policy than the Library of Congress does. I've searched for, this is a test search that I've done before, so I know it works, the Italian Job DVD. It's being a little bit slow today, but so they do, it's a source and you can download them for free, and so they have more of a variety of items than the Library of Congress does. So here is the Italian Job DVD. Let's see, and then you can do MARC. This is obviously a very brief one, maybe not the best one to choose. Again, you have to make sure that you are using good judgment as far as what you're importing into your catalog, but you can get a MARC record and you can save it and then go back and export a batch of your saved records later. Let me get back to my presentation here. Oops, sorry about that. So those are the two sources of where you can kind of download library-created MARC records. Another source that I wanted to point out is two websites where you can take information that was not made for libraries and convert it into MARC record format. And again, this would be a good place to get information about things that are not found in the Library of Congress, like audiovisual items. One of them is the Amazon to MARC converter, which is what it sounds like. It takes information from the website amazon.com and it allows you to export it in MARC format. So I'll do my same search for Italian Job again, and we want to do it in video format. And let's see, we're looking for, let's say, the 2003 version. And you can click through and make sure that it's what you want. You can look at the actual Amazon page. But then over here is the MARC functions. You can view the MARC record to see what it looks like, and then you can either export, which means just to export a single record, or you can save it to export a batch of records later. And so, these aren't going to be perfect MARC or library standard RDA format records because they, they're not working with library data. So, for example, they probably won't have any subject headings. Amazon doesn't necessarily have catalogers assigning Library of Congress subject headings, but if you find it kind of intimidating to just sit there and look at a blank screen and create a MARC record from scratch, this will give you a good place to start, and you can import this to your catalog and then do the tweaks that are necessary. The second one is IMDb, which is Internet Movie Database, and it does the same thing. It takes information from IMDb and imports it into MARC format. So I'll do that same Italian Job search again. The interesting thing about this is that, it's obviously searching movies, but the IMDb records for these, sort of represent the abstract version of a movie without any particular format. So, you're not going to have any information that says this is a DVD or anything, but it's going to tell you, who the actors are and sort of the more abstract concept of the motion picture itself. So you'll still need to do some tweaking to reflect the actual format, whether it's a DVD or a Blu-ray or whatever you have in your collection. But it's a kind of, again, a good place to get a starting point when you're looking at movie-related data that you want to have in your catalog. So far we've been talking about places to get bibliographic records. You can also get authority information from the Library of Congress. They have all of their authority records available for free, and you can search them. It's at authorities.loc.gov. And this would be useful, for example, looking for authors' names. If you were looking for Jane Austen, you can do a name authority heading. And I don't find this to be the most user-friendly format. You have to go through quite a few clicks to get to the actual authority record, but you know, it's free, so I learned to make do with it. And you can again see it in either MARC or in a labeled format. And down here is where you can save it and choose MARC format, and then you'll get a file that you can save on your computer locally and then import into your catalog. So once you have MARC records, whether they are bibliographic records or authority records, you're still going to kind of need to know how to work with MARC in order to manipulate them and get them to do what you want for your catalog. Even if you don't have to create records from scratch, but especially if you do. But even if you don't, you may want to tweak things and add subject headings, or you know, do the column a little bit differently. And so it's still useful to be able to speak the language and know what someone's talking about when they refer to a particular MARC tag, or what an indicator is, etc., etc. And there are two resources that I find really useful for that. They're sort of dictionaries, I guess, some dictionaries to MARC speak. One of them is OCLC's Bibliographic Formats and Standards. This is a free resource. Like I said, you know, being able to download records from OCLC's database is a paid service, but you can access this online for free. And basically, if you are staring at a MARC field and you don't know what on earth a 245 tag is, you can click on it. They're grouped by the first number of the tag, so the 2XX fields are anything that starts with 2. And so let's say, and then the individual tags are over along the left-hand sidebar. And so if you're interested in the 245, you can go there and see, oh yeah, that's where the title goes. And then you can see what the various indicators mean, what the subfields mean, the fact that the main part of the title goes in subfield A, that the subtitle goes in subfield B, that the author's name, the statement of responsibility, goes in subfield C. And then what I find most useful about it is that it has a lot of examples. You know, if you're like me, you know I'm the type of cataloger who learns best. You know, I can read the rules, but it always makes more sense when I sit there and look at an example of what somebody else has done. And so I like that it has all these examples of the various subfields and indicators and situations you might encounter when looking at some of these MARC tags. The next resource is basically the same thing. Instead of coming from OCLC, it comes from the Library of Congress. This is their MARC standards resources, loc.gov/MARC. And to get to the area where it's similar to what we were looking at with the bib formats from OCLC, click on bibliographic over here on the left-hand side, and then you'll see it's pretty much the same thing. They're grouped by tag number. Again, if we're looking for our 245 field, we go over here. The individual tags are listed here, and then it's the same thing. It tells you what the indicators are, what goes in each subfield, and then lots and lots of examples again. You know, and I always say when I'm training catalogers that, you know, cataloging is not about memorizing everything and knowing exactly what to do. It's just knowing where to go to get the information so you can remember what to do when you need to do it. So the bibliographic formats and standards from OCLC and the Library of Congress MARC resources are two places that I always go to, and I've been a professional cataloger for 7-8 years now, and I still look things up. So you don't need to memorize things, you just need to know where to find the information when you need it. Another different take on MARC resource that I found is two resources that are available from Follett, the vendor, on their website. I don't think either of these are currently maintained, but all of their archives are still available. They have blog posts in two categories called Tag of the Month and Ask Ms. Mark. And so Tag of the Month is just what it sounds like. They previously had this series where they would highlight a tag of the month, and it would tell you everything you need to know about that particular tag. And it might be written in a little bit more conversational tone than the bib formats and standards of the Library of Congress MARC resources, so it might be more helpful. If you're just looking at those resources and it's just not making sense, you can come and look something up in the archives here. Ms. Mark was sort of a Dear Abby type advice column for people who had more questions, so that's a good place to go to as well. And if you really, really need to get in kind of down and dirty and mess around with your MARC records, I can't speak highly enough about MARCedit. As Louise said, I'm going to be doing another session for a whole hour on MARCedit itself next month for Rails, and it is a really, really, really handy tool. And it's free. Unlike these other resources that I've been talking about, MARCedit is not web-based. You go to this website and you download it onto your local computer. So it's a piece of software, but it's really cool. Basically, it allows you to manipulate your data in ways that perhaps your local system doesn't allow you to do. You can, for example, if you have a local field and you're getting a huge batch of thousands of records or even hundreds of records from perhaps an ebook vendor, and you need to add this local field to all of them, it can allow you to go in there and add it to all of them without touching each one of them individually. And I know some local catalog systems can do that, but some cannot. And so if yours is one of those that cannot, then MARCedit can do that for you. You can also delete fields. You can take a batch of MARC records and split them into smaller batches, or you can merge individual records into a large batch if you need to do that to manipulate them. Another thing is that MARCedit can also be used to create records from scratch. If you do need to do original cataloging and for some reason you don't have a local system that you can create original records in and you're not an OCLC subscriber, you can use MARCedit as an editor basically to create your original MARC records from scratch. Gosh, it's like there's so much to say about MARCedit. I want to make sure I'm hitting its highest selling points. Yeah, you can add fields, delete fields. I have used it to. At my previous job, I worked with government records that came from the GPO. We got electronic resources, federal government documents from the GPO, and we get a monthly report every month with the records for them. And I wanted to be able to pass those along to our other GovDoc staff who are not catalogers without making them hurt their eyes by staring at the MARC tags and everything. So I would use MARCedit to convert those records, pull out the relevant things, call number, title, and maybe URL, and convert it to an Excel spreadsheet, and then I could pass that along to the non-cataloging people and get their opinions on which one we should import into our catalog. And so you can use that for converting MARC records to Excel spreadsheets or other types of formats as well. If you are in a situation where you need people to, evaluate your catalog for things you can weed or something like that, you can use MARCedit to convert MARC records into something a little bit more user-friendly. Another resource that I always like to talk about, it doesn't really fit into any of these other categories of sources of MARC records or MARC manipulators. It's just really its own thing, but it's really, really useful as the cataloging calculator. And it's been around for a long time, but Kyle Banerjee, who does it, he's continually adding things to it. It has things to reflect changes to the RDA rules, so he's just really between him and Terry Reese, who is the creator of MARCedit, those two really do a lot to contributing free tools to the cataloging community. Let me jump out to the cataloging calculator website to show you a little bit about how it works. The thing that I use this for the most is probably generating cutter numbers for authors' names when I'm doing call numbers. Um, there are cutter tables out there, and I can read the cutter table when I need to, but it's often nice to just be able to go here. If you select the radio button for LC Cutter, and then start typing in an author's last name, or the first word of the title, or whatever you're basing your cutter on. So I'll pretend I'm cataloging a book by myself. If I'm typing in Nimsicont, then you will see that it says N56 is the appropriate cutter, and if you need to extend it, you can just keep typing and it'll keep popping up digits, and it saves a lot of brain power when you're doing things like generating cutter numbers. A lot of these other options are sort of just kind of quick reference options where you can come to a one-stop shop for looking up things like MARC codes for languages, for example. If you can't remember, I'll start with English, and it'll show you the three-letter codes to put into your fixed fields in your MARC record, things like that. If you can't remember what Italian is, it pops those up as well. It has the same things like that for geographic area codes, country codes. If you need to know the codes for RDA content types, you can start typing in text, and it'll pop up with both the authorized word for it and the code if you're using the subfield Bs in your 33X fields for your RDA. Those of you who are familiar with the RDA MARC format. You can use it to look up subject headings. Let's see. Sorry, knitting. And so then you can click on any of these, and then it will take you out to the Library of Congress's subject headings website. So it's a quick access way to access subject headings. There are a lot of things you can do with the cataloging calculator. And again, I just think it's pretty amazing that Kyle makes it and puts it out for free. So do we have any questions coming in? I think I've been going along at a pretty good pace here. I just wanted to make sure I didn't see anything coming in that Louise was passing along to me. But
no, Emily,
if you
no
do,
question. Yeah, no questions
great.
at the moment. But if just a
Okay,
reminder, if anyone wants to, just go ahead and type those in the question box, and I'll share them.
thank you. The next section of resources I was going to talk about are, well, the cataloging calculator was, I guess, a good segue into this, was call number resources. A lot of times I found that with people who consider themselves to be accidental catalogers, a lot of times, they're copy cataloging 99% of the stuff that comes. They don't have to really worry about creating original records, but they do kind of want a more thoughtful approach to assigning call numbers. They want to make sure, either they'll get something and it just has a Library of Congress number and they need a Dewey number for their library, or they'll get something and the record has a call number on it, but they just don't really think that fits very well with their library collection. And so I think that classifying or assigning call numbers is an area where you really, you can do a lot of good for your patrons by taking your local collection into account and really, doing a thoughtful evaluation of whether or not the call number that comes with the record really works for you or not. So I did want to provide some free resources for making, let's say, judgment calls when it comes to call numbers. The first resource I want to talk about is called Classify. It's a relatively new resource. It's from OCLC again, but it is freely available. Not everything from OCLC is something you have to pay for. Classify is relatively new, and I have found myself recommending it to people more and more. My current job is at a law library at a university, but prior to this, I worked at the Nebraska Library Commission, which is the state library for Nebraska, and I was the cataloger there, and I was, part of my job was to answer cataloging questions from people across the state, and I would say probably 75% of the questions I got were, what do I do for a call number for this? And I would found myself over the last few months I was there really, really recommending Classify a lot. And probably the best way to explain it is to just jump out and start using it, because it's a very visual resource, and I just find it really cool. So what you do basically is, if you have a book in hand and you're not really sure what call number to assign it to, or to assign to it for whatever reason, whether it's the record, wherever you got the record from doesn't have one, or it does, but you're not really sure if it works with your library. You can go ahead and enter whatever information you have, either an ISBN or the title or the author's name or a subject heading. If you don't have a particular book, but you're just looking for a topic to find a call number for. But let's just do a title search. One that I was doing earlier this week that I thought had interesting results was Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama. And so you get your list of results, and when you find the one that you want, you click on it, and basically the value of this resource is this lovely little pie chart here. This tells you for anybody who has cataloged this book and has holdings in WorldCat for the OCLC database, these are the numbers that they have assigned to it. So you'll see, obviously, this is a memoir, so a lot of it they just get B for biography. But some people do go ahead and use Dewey numbers. A lot of them are 973, and it's just a matter of how long do you want to extend the number. I find it interesting that so many people have apparently actually used this full 973.040596, etc., etc. But a lot of people have gone with 973.04. But you'll notice interesting things like one or a smaller portion of the libraries have put it in 305, which I think is sociology, perhaps. It's somewhere in the social sciences. So not everybody has taken the biography approach with this, which is an interesting thing too. So, and it does, the default is Dewey, but it does have Library of Congress classification as well. And if you want to see them all together, you can do that. And so this just tells you basically whether they're classified versus unclassified. And so it tells you that the most frequent is just to class it with B for biography, but a lot of people have done their options. So it's really cool for me. I recommend it to a lot of people, and I've gotten really good feedback about Classify as a resource, which I just think it's, a lot of times when you're on your, especially if you're in the type of situation where maybe you're in a small organization and you're the only person working there and you don't have a lot of cataloging experience, it's nice to sort of be able to bounce things off of people and say, I was thinking of putting it here, but what do you think? And if you don't have anybody to do that for you, Classify is kind of an option to do that. The other call number resource that I wanted to point out is, again, on the OCLC website, and it's basically a mapping system for going back and forth between the Library of Congress classification and Dewey Decimal classification. And because sometimes you'll get a record when you're copy cataloging, and it will have a call number, but it's not the classification system that you use. Maybe it was created by an academic library, and it has a Library of Congress call number, but you are a public library that uses Dewey, or vice versa. And so this is kind of a map. It won't get you down to the most specific level of Dewey, because Dewey is a paid product through OCLC. Again, the full Dewey Decimal classification is something you need to pay for, but it can get you to kind of the rough area. If you have something coming in that has a Library of Congress call number of B, you can know that it might be in the 100s in your 100 to 109 of your Dewey Decimal collection. And so, and then maybe you can, by, if you have access to the Dewey schedules, you can go and look it up, or, browsing your shelves in your library, you can kind of figure out what the exact number to use is, but it'll get you in the right area. And then vice versa, there is one that maps to from Dewey to Library of Congress. In this case, if you are in a situation where you're an LC organization and all you have is a Dewey number, once you get this general range, the Library of Congress classification is available for free in PDF format online. The Library of Congress has recently stopped publishing it in print, but it is available on the Library of Congress website, loc.gov. I think there's a section that says for librarians, and then cataloging classification, and then there'll be publications. Actually, let me go and test that out. And so with this case, if you are going from Dewey to LC, you can, you probably could actually get to the actual call number that you want. And so, yes, if you go to loc.gov and then click on cataloging, classification, and then there's products available for download. And I guess this has actually led me serendipitously to another free resource to point out for catalogers. Subject headings are all available online. The subject headings manual. Classification schedules is what I was talking about. They are all available here in PDF file. They will take a while to download because they're fairly big files, but yes, this is the entire Library of Congress classification available for free. And so those are kind of the summary, the tools that, the title of this presentation was the Accidental Cataloger Tips and Tools to Help You Use the Rules, and those were a lot of freely available tools that I find very useful, and I think especially people who consider themselves accidental catalogers and don't necessarily perhaps have the budget or the expertise to have access to some of these other more expensive tools like OCLC WorldCat and Connection. So for most part, I've been talking about tools, and so I guess this last section here at the end, I would just say this is the tips section, is that yes, having these online tools are nice, but sometimes you really just need to talk to somebody about it. And I can't recommend highly enough training and networking resources, just so you feel that you're not alone, so that the librarian community is giving you this big group hug here. Library associations are a very good place. When I give this presentation in Nebraska, I always talk about our Nebraska Library Association. Our state library association has a really strong technical services roundtable. I don't know if the Illinois Library Association has something comparable, but I would definitely recommend checking that out. You can't learn enough from other librarians. If you can't learn it from any of these tools online, I'm sure asking somebody else for help will get you to where you need to go. Library systems, you guys are obviously fortunate to have access to Rails and other library systems in Illinois. So, there are tools out there that can, people out there that you can use. If you don't know it yourself and you have tried these online tools and it's still not working for you, please take advantage of training and networking resources out there. The library community, as I've found, has always been really, really great about sharing, and people are more than happy to help other people out when they know something that somebody else doesn't know, and they're more than happy to answer questions. So definitely don't underestimate the power of talking to other librarians. Either locally or online. I have a great Facebook group I'm on called Troublesome Catalogers and Magical Metadata Fairies. Silly name, but great group for asking questions. So don't forget things like Facebook and Twitter for social media is great for professional advice. At least that's been my experience. So wow, that went really fast. I guess I was expecting more questions. Definitely, if you have questions, please go ahead and type them in, and Louise will pass them on to me. To you, yeah, to me. As she said, this will be recorded so that you can come back to it later, and hopefully people who weren't able to attend right now will be able to find it later. I will be doing a few more webinars for Rails this fall, so I look forward to working with all you again. Oh, yes, I see Louise is passing along a comment. A number of people have asked if you will share your PowerPoint slides. And yes, I will. Actually, I'm going to type a URL into Louise of where my PowerPoint slides will be. I have a slide share. Or do you want me to email them to you, or should I do have them hosted, or I will soon have them hosted at slideshare.net.
Hi, Emily. Yeah, that would be great. Whatever is easiest for you. If you have them online, we can post that link, or I can put a PDF on our Rails website. It's up to you.
Okay, but yes, I'm definitely very willing to share my PowerPoint slides. Yeah, I know these had a lot of URLs in them that hopefully will be useful to you later, so I can definitely do that and make that available.
That's awesome. There was one question I'm not sure if you covered, but going back to the Classify resource, somebody asked if that worked with ANSCR for CDs. I'm not sure if you covered that or not.
No, I don't think I did cover that, and I'm not sure I know that off the top of my head. Let me skip back there. Let's see here. It does appear, let's see, there are a few different options for standard numbers. I guess, yeah, what you see is kind of what you get as far as the access points, the ways into this. So um, generally, I think anything that is covered in the WorldCat database should be in here. Have I answered the question yet? I've forgotten exactly what the
Uh,
acronym was that.
AN, oh, I lost it too. ANSCR for CDs.
ANSCR. Um, I don't know if a for sure answer off the top of my head, but is that a, I'm showing my ignorance here, is that a classification or a number, like a standard number, or
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that came in from Barbara. If Barbara can follow up,
Sure, yeah,
maybe I'll see if we
yeah, if
can.
you can provide a little more clarification, Barbara, I would definitely love to be able to figure this out. But like I said, it does reflect whatever is currently in the WorldCat database. So, anybody who's an OCLC member is creating records. So if they've created a record for a CD, it's probably in there.
And then somebody else asked, do you have resources for NLM?
National Library of Medicine classification, I'm assuming that's a reference to. Basically, off the top of my head, I would say I know, well, now the cataloging calculator has the medical subject headings, but I don't think it has National Library of Medicine. Let me just do a search really quick. I would think that there's, should be freely available because being a government agency, they should be like the Library of Congress and make those available online. So if you Google NLM classification, let's see here, they do have an outline, an index, and you can search class numbers here. So this is off the top of my head is the resource I know of for NLM classification. That's nlm.nih.gov/class.
Okay.
And that would pretty much be the equivalent to what I posted with the Library of Congress classification.
Okay, great. Melissa said thank you. And then just to follow up on that acronym for the ANSCR, it's a music call number system.
Music colors.
Alphanumeric system for classification of recordings.
Wow. And that is not something I'm familiar with. It does not look like there's a search option for that. So I guess I would have to say no on that, as far as I can tell. Somebody who's more of a music cataloger might be able to answer that more completely, but I guess my brief answer would be no, it doesn't look like Classify is really optimized to handle that.
Okay. All right, and then I forwarded a longer question to you, if you can see it there, but I'm going to read it out loud for the audience too. It says, let's say the accident just happened. What if it's the first day in front of a computer with a cart of stuff to catalog? Assume a rational cataloging system and good documentation. What's an initial workflow or jump start? Just pick up thing one and try, maybe? I don't know. Wow. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, really, the way to learn cataloging is by doing it. Even if you were lucky enough to have cataloging classes in your education, I still feel like I learned way more from being a working cataloger than I ever did in library school. You said assume, I'm assuming you have a workplace where they have, some sort of documentation. I would, definitely make use of that. And if not, I would highly suggest developing your own as you go along, so that you can make decisions that you stick to, and then the person after you will definitely thank you for doing that. My sort of guiding philosophy is cataloging is, the perfect is the enemy of the good is a quote that I've heard attributed to many people, including Voltaire, I think. But, that's kind of one of my guiding philosophies. don't get so caught up in the details that you're delaying stuff from getting out there on the shelves. Just make a decision and go with it. And so, yeah, I would say just pick up stuff off that cart and just, just do it, and don't worry about it being absolutely perfect. Just think like a patron, and, think of what you would want to be in there. There aren't any cataloging police. You're not going to break anything, even if it's not a 100% perfect record. And, I always tell people when they're learning to catalog is, make a decision about how to do something, be consistent, do that same way all the time, and document it so that people know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I guess that's my advice for a beginning accidental cataloger.
All right, thanks, Emily. And then just a follow-up comment about the CDs. Melissa shared that if you search for CDs and classify, you might get lucky and get the call number in the record.
Oh,
Right.
good.
Yeah. So
Good.
that's one option.
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, music cataloging seems to be its own world, and it's not one that I have much experience in, so I'm sorry I can't be more use on that front.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I see for right now. So I guess we'll wrap up a little bit early. So thank you, Emily, so much. I've seen a few comments from people that they thought this was really helpful, and they thank you
Great.
for it, and we thank you for it. And as I told everyone, we recorded this, so we'll post it on the Rails website and in a few days. And just a reminder that Emily will be with us again next month on September 16th at 2 o'clock doing an introduction to MARC Edit. So we hope you can join us then. And thank you again, Emily. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.